Aston Martin will officially partner Honda from 2026 as a full works team tie-in. Now, given Honda have been in, then out, then in, then out, and then in, and, well, I feel like I should say shake it all about at this point, with Red Bull powertrains, I don't even know what their status is at the moment. It might seem like a surprise to some, but with Red Bull switching to Ford in 2026, or is that just a logo on the side of the car? What are Aston Martin's chances of dominating in F1, and why are Honda doing this? Let's get all of those answers with our man, Jonathan Noble. I'm Martyn Lee from the Autosport podcast. Jonathan joins me to fill us in. So let's get right into it, John. Why has Honda decided to commit to Formula One like this less than, 3 years after saying that they are quitting Formula One?
Well, I think there's two parallel reasons really here. I think first, to win championships. I think when they quit Formula One off the back of the McLaren years hadn't been very good. It looked better with Red Bull, but I don't quite think they're anticipating turning into a world championship winner quite quickly. They've now won back-to-back titles with Red Bull. They're likely to get a third this season, and who knows how long that goes on for. And they were quite clear today when we spoke to Honda and Aston Martin that this is a partnership based on winning a championship. It's not based on moving forward over 5 years. It's not based on potentially winning over a set period. This is for world titles. So you've got that. But then alongside that, you've got Honda's kind of ambitions in road cars and sustainability in the environment. When they quit Formula One, it was because they wanted a carbon neutral future. They didn't feel the direction that F1 was going in could suit that. But F1 shifted a lot. It's got more aggressive with this net zero 2030 ambitions, the move to fully sustainable fuel. The 26 regs have been sorted out. The MGUH that Honda didn't especially like at the beginning has gone. More electric power. So I think the F1 engines move towards what they need for road cars. And Honda are saying that direct technology now in Formula One can go straight into road cars. It's perfect for them. It all fits.
Now, you have spoken to the both organisations, and I mentioned in the intro, I kind of half joked about in out, and shake it all about. But Honda have had very successful periods in Formula One. They've even had a connection with Team Silverstone through Mugen Honda, and actually Aston Martin and Honda have both been on the side of the Red Bull as sponsors and logos in recent years. But you've spoken to the teams. Honda will need to once again spool up and re-equip that Formula One outfit, which has more recently been wound down again. Did they talk about that and the investment and time required?
Yeah, I think there is an element of catching up. When they quit Formula One, I mean, it was primarily to walk away completely. There was no ambition to stay in Formula One. It was only because Red Bull came to the table and said, look, we need a supply of engines. Can you at least just help us produce the power units? We'll take the power units. You can manufacture them in Sakura in Japan. And that process began. And I think it kind of, when the success came, Honda obviously got a bit more interested in helping out, which then transferred into a wider HRC, Honda Racing Corporation relationship, extended to 25. We've seen the Honda name come back on. But over that period, with the engine freeze, a lot of the engineers who were working on the Honda project have been dispatched to road car projects and electric projects. So has been wound down a lot. But we asked them today, how far behind are you coming from? And they actually think they haven't lost that much ground, because with the engine freeze, you can't develop the current engines. So no one's aggressively developing these power units as of now. So they think it won't be too bad to get things wound up. And I think that's why the announcements come now. It seems very, very early for 26 to be committing like this. But I think if Honda had waited 6 more months, 12 more months, they would have been very, very much on the back foot. So I think this timetable is kind of perfect for them.
And what did Aston Martin have to say for themselves? Big investment happening there. I was only at Silverstone a week or two ago when there was some GB3 and some GT stuff on track that I was having a look at. And as you leave the circuit, you can't help but notice Aston are spending some serious money on their campus there. So they clearly have ambitions to be a world championship winning squad. We've seen McLaren try it, and it didn't work, with the perhaps clash of cultures, if you want to put it down to that reason. But for whatever reason, a British organisation, a Japanese company, they didn't work well together. We've seen it work more successfully with Red Bull more recently. They didn't have those differences, and they had more success together. What did Aston Martin say about their ability to work with a company that has different cultures, is physically based a long way away from where they're building this fabulous new headquarters?
I think what was quite significant today was the first press conference we had was with Martin Whitmarsh, ex-McLaren F1 team boss, who did that Honda deal for McLaren in 2015, but had gone by the time it actually started. But he was around the previous Honda era, well understands how the Japanese corporate culture works, well understands how to get the best out of Honda. So I think he sees and understands what Honda needs, knows how the relationship between the kind of English operations and Japanese operations can work. So feels there is the right opportunity, feels that McLaren, after he left, didn't do the right things. Well, obviously, we know how difficult it got at times there, especially with Fernando Alonso. There weren't some easy times during that period. But I think, Martin Whitmarsh very much on the front foot with these negotiations. He's been there in the past. He knows what it needs. And I think it says everything about Aston Martin's ambition that they're going down this route. They felt that Mercedes, would have been a safe option. Continue the customer relationship, keep using the gearboxes, keep using the suspension. But it's not how you aren't going to beat the Mercedes Works team with exactly the same components.
Well, of course, I'll draw that parallel. McLaren had winning success with Mercedes, the engines that Aston Martin are using right now. Although, of course, in an era when they were up against Honda as a team, not after the acquisition and a works Mercedes as that kind of became. So is there a risk here that Aston Martin, with Mercedes power, doing very well, as a customer, beating the manufacturer? Let's not forget that for anyone in the audience right now. They're doing just fine. This seems to me like it's a big risk to take. Did they talk about the fact that, well, they're doing very well, thank you very much, at the minute?
They did, I think, and it's quite interesting. Martin Whitmarsh was asked about this. What is the attraction? I mean, it's fairly obvious what attraction is for a works manufacturer deal as opposed to a customer relationship. There's a financial aspect there, but there's an effort aspect as well, that Honda will be throwing everything they can to make this relationship work, improve the engines, push on forward. Whereas the Mercedes is more a customer relationship, and you give them the money and they get what they've promised. But Martin was quite clear. He said that Mercedes-Benz as a company, as a racing team, has ambitions to win. Aston Martin as a racing team has ambitions to win. And there's an incompatibility with those two ambitions, which is basically that if Aston Martin wants to win in Formula One, it's got to go and do its own thing. It can't be a customer team. It has to have manufacturer support. And this, I think, is primarily what's driven that deal with Honda.
Well, Aston Martin has close ties to Mercedes, which is a shareholder in the road car company. More recently, there was a big investment by the Chinese company Geely, the owners of Volvo and Polestar, the London black cabs that we might see flying around the capital. And so with Honda moving towards an electric future, with Mercedes doing the same, Aston Martin are a smaller name in automotive, but presumably, just like all the other companies that have said, we'll never electrify, the likes of Ferrari and Lamborghini, well, they all are. Is this not a little bit strange, almost a conflict of interests in the road car world?
I'll go back to another Martin Whitmarsh quote. He was in quite good form today, actually.
It sounds like he had lots to say for himself.
Well, he always has a lot to say for himself. He's one of the better people to speak to in the paddock. But he's been very low profile ever since his return. So this is kind of his first time he's spoken to us. But he was asked, how does this fit in with the Aston Martin brand? Mercedes are shareholders. Mercedes engines are in Aston Martin road cars. There's the Geely link. So how does Honda, being a works partner in Formula One, fit into the brand? And he said, it doesn't fit, basically. It is a complication, and it's not the sort of thing you would do as a grand plan to have Honda as part of a luxury sports car brand like Aston Martin. But the Aston Martin Formula One team exists to win. That's the priority. That's all that matters. Above all else, the ambitions of that team is to win. And that's why it's gone down the Honda route. The rest can all be kind of put aside to details and can get sorted out later on.
Well, I've saved the best till last. Now, Aston Martin do want to win, and we've yet to see Fernando Alonso or, of course, Lance Stroll win in 2023 in that car. There's some races coming up where perhaps they've got an outside chance if everything falls their way. Fernando Alonso with a Honda engine, he won't still be around in Formula One, will he?
There was a question thrown today to Watanabe-san, who's the CEO of HRC, just said, I think someone didn't want to ask the obvious question, which was about Fernando. He said, will you have any say on drivers? And there was a wry smile from him and a wry smile from Martin Whitmarsh as well. So It was fairly obvious what they were saying. Watanabe said, it's not our place to choose drivers. So we then followed up with, is Fernando a possibility? Honda were clear, no objections at all. What's done is done in the past. I think Fernando himself is a different character nowadays. I think he regrets what he said that day in Japan. I think it was just a sign of intense frustration. Very important race at a time when what had been promised by Honda was far below what was actually delivered. I think Fernando himself generally is a more mature driver now, still performing as brilliantly as ever. Whether he's still around in 2026, he'll be 45 that year, so it would be fairly astonishing if he could be competing in Formula 1. If he's competing at the level he's competing now, I think it'd be great for Formula 1, but let's see if it gets that far. But I think for now, don't believe any people who say that, Honda do not want anything to do with Fernando Alonso, because if he's driving as quick as he's driving now, they'll take him in an instant.
We have got the rest of this year to go, and then all of 24 and 25. If Fernando is still at the top of Formula 1 in 2026, that's it. I'm calling it. He's a robot. He's the bionic man. They've done so. What an incredible feat that would be. But this is about Honda and Aston Martin and their plan to both get back to the very top of the sport and become world champions together. Can they do that? That's the question we'll ask you in the comments. Do you think this is the right move for Aston Martin? They're winning. Well, maybe not yet this year, but they could be winners as a customer, and then you haven't got to develop an engine. You just take all the bits and write somebody a paycheck. Or is this the best way to do a full works partnership with a name as storied in Formula 1, but also as checkered as Honda? At times, maybe their decisions have been questionable. Well, but that's with hindsight, right? So it's not so easy to always draw those conclusions at the time. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love to read them. Every single one. So thank you very much for watching this one today. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for more just like this, and we'll see you on the next one.